Most of us grew up with a very specific image of the American cowboy. We absorbed it without questioning who was centered and who was missing. That image shaped how this country sees horses and who gets to stand at the center of the story. This episode asks you to look at it again. Today's guest is Drake LeBlanc, a Creole cowboy from Louisiana, filmmaker, and cultural preservationist. He was raised in a community where horses are not an aesthetic, they are identity. In this conversation, you will hear the history of Black cowboys in a way you never have. You will hear how the image of the cowboy was reshaped, and you will hear what it sounds like when someone stands fully in who they are. As you listen, notice your own story. Are you wearing the image you were given, or building one that feels true?
Dear Horse World, it's Drake LeBlanc.
Drake, welcome to the Dear Horse World podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy you're in the studio today.
Me too. It's been great.
Okay, everybody, I'm gonna set the tone here because we've had the privilege of we're here in Lafayette.
Henderson.
Sorry, we're in Henderson, Louisiana.
Don't offend the people of St. Martin Parish.
Sorry, okay. We're in Henderson, Louisiana, which is just outside Lafayette.
Right.
And we've got a chance to spend some time with Drake and his community. And I'm going to tell you guys a story that's going to set the tone for this episode in a way that is so powerful, it still gives me goosebumps. So we are out on, now how do I say that? The basin?
Atchafalaya Basin.
Atchafalaya Basin. Okay, we're out on, it's almost like a flat bottom boat.
Yeah. It's, I forget what those boats are called, but yeah, flat bottom boat.
Okay,
yeah.
And we're with a friend of Drake's, whose name is Jordan. And for anyone who is a huge appreciator of Cajun or Creole culture, they will follow him on Instagram. He is quite well known.
Yeah.
And he is a Cajun cultural ambassador, really.
Yeah. And musician.
Right. And horseman.
Right.
And we're out on this basin, and we were sharing with Drake and with Jordan about how Ben and I had gone in to Lafayette for coffee, and we ended up chatting with these gentlemen, and they ended up being brothers. They ended up being 3 of 14 brothers, and they're the Huval brothers. And we're chatting with Jordan, and we were like, man, we just had such an amazing, and this is such a representation, and this is what we're going to talk a little bit about, is how much of an impression the community here has made on us, and the connection and the genuineness of the community here. And so we were saying to Jordan, these guys were just so lovely, and we were just having such a great chat. And he goes, oh, you were at Tante Marie's. And Ben goes, how do you know that? Yeah, we were at Tante Marie's, and how do you know that? And he goes, because I know my community, brother. And he was staring out over the water, and he was steering the boat, and it was just such a powerful moment for me, for him to so clearly have an answer to that question.
Right. Just based off of last names of who y'all were with or who y'all met.
Yeah.
Who knew.
And I was looking back at him, and he's staring over the water, and he's steering, and he was so casual. And the way that he said, it's because I know my community. It made me realize how many of us move through the world not knowing our community, and not knowing that, having that deep connection with all the people that live around you, so that when someone visits your community and has a really exceptional or really moving experience, you can connect to them immediately because you have deep, deep roots in the place that you live.
Yeah.
And that moment made such an impact on me, because not only did it make me realize how important community is, but it also made me realize that we don't prioritize it the way that we used to.
Right.
So I feel like this is such a great kickoff place to talk about your community here.
Yeah. The Creole Cowboys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What does Creole Cowboy mean? If you can explain to everybody who's listening or watching, what does Creole Cowboy mean? Both by definition and to you.
Right. Well, in Louisiana, our history and our culture has always been very complex and very mixed in a lot of ways. And to define what a Creole Cowboy is, I have to first define what Creole is, right? And so Creole comes from this Portuguese word Criollo, which meant of the colony, like originally of the colony, which was used all over the world, like not only in Louisiana. It was used in places that were settled, by various countries, to say that this person is from this area, whether they're French mixed with Spanish or Cajun mixed with, black, or black mixed with Native American, right? And so in Louisiana, we had a lot of different instances of that. And we have this, I feel like it's a pretty corny term, but we say, it's like Louisiana is a big gumbo pot because everything just kind of gets mixed together. So you have, in the music, you have, the French fiddle tunes, from East Canada, and then you have the German waltzes, and then you have the percussion and the rhythms from the slaves and the free people of color, and like all this mixing into like one genre of music, right? Same thing is happening in cuisine, same thing is happening in fashion and the way that people dress, and also the same thing is happening in horse culture and everything else in between. So to be a Creole Cowboy is an embodiment of what it means to be Creole and of Louisiana and of all those different cultures that mix and make this state and the people of it as unique as we are. And then it just kind of, it turned into something. It was born out of necessity and survival. People just using whatever they had access to survive, the same way the Indians were helping black people escape slavery. It was a lot of Creole culture and was born out of necessity and survival, but then Creole identity was born out of the pride that our people have in that. So when you look at the Creole Cowboys that you see today, on the trail rides, and people in the Creole community that maybe don't have horses or aren't out on the farm as much as like the next person, but they're still very much in their essence Creole, and they still know a lot of the cuisine, or they may still speak Creole French with like their their parents and their grandparents, so it's a lot of different things. But I think to be a Creole Cowboy is to fully embody the history and the traditions of Louisiana Creole culture and implement it into everything that you do, including your horsemanship.
And what does, if you, like when you move through the world and you travel all over, outside your community or outside your parish, I love, okay. And let's explain to everyone, because that's what I asked before we pressed record. I said,
what's a parish?
Drake, what's a parish? Why do we call them parish? Why are we referring to different parts of Louisiana as parishes?
Yeah. So Louisiana is still under the Napoleonic Code, as far as our legal system, and a lot of how cities and counties are set up throughout the state. So it's called parishes, and it comes from, I don't know the exact specifics, but it comes from something that the church did, like the same way you have parishioners in the Catholic Church. So we just have parishes, but it's the equivalent of a county. But yeah, it's called them parishes.
So when you travel and you are meeting new people, if you were to say, I'm a Creole Cowboy, what does that mean to you when you say that to somebody? Someone who has never been to Louisiana, someone who doesn't know Creole culture. What does that mean, though, when you say it? What does the feeling that comes inside you look like?
Vulnerability, I would say, is the first feeling that comes, because just the nature of my work and my upbringing, I've always been in unusual places for a guy from my neighborhood, from my parish, even my age demographic. A lot of times I don't necessarily fit in. So I'm always prepared for judgment when I do label or define myself to a new group of people in a new area. So I feel like there's a lot of vulnerability that comes when I introduce myself as that. And most of the times I feel like I tend to attract or end up around like-minded people, people that mean well, people that have good intentions. And so usually it turns into a moment of education, you know, and it feels like informative and prideful, because I do get to explain to someone what a parish is, and you know what role that plays in our identities, and you know, explain to them what Creole is, and explain to people that like, hey, yeah, I know you may have never heard of Black Cowboys, but you know, we kind of were the first, you know, like let's have that conversation, you know. And I appreciate those moments, and some of them aren't easy, you know. A lot of them aren't easy because there's a lot of context and information that needs to happen in order to do the conversation justice, and for me to do my ancestors justice, and to do the people that don't necessarily come from this culture, to do them justice, as far as like, hey, if you want to learn, I can't fault you for that, because there may have been people in the past that would have had the same information or knowledge that could have informed you, but they chose not to, out of anger or out of hurt or out of spite, or because they were just so tired, you know, and rightfully so, right? It's like so many minority cultures have been getting the short end of the stick for centuries, that they don't want the burden of educating the people that don't know better. But in my mind, I'm like, my God, my higher power put me in a position to where I can meet the type of people that do genuinely want to know more and do genuinely want to do better. So in return, I feel like I have this responsibility. Every time I take a deep breath, somebody's like, okay, what's Creole, what's Cajun? I'm like, whew. Like, you know, like it feels like I'm about to start a marathon on a Monday morning when I really didn't plan to. But I feel privileged and blessed to have the information and the experiences in my life. And I feel so lucky to, you know, come from Louisiana culture and to have a family that's like so deeply rooted in that, and to be able to share that, to turn that into a career in a lot of ways, and meet people that are genuinely interested in it and like want to learn more and just like continue the momentum of cultural preservation. So that's what I feel when you know, I travel and meet people, and when people travel to meet us and come here, you know, it's the same both ways.
This is the most ample time for me to ask you. So you talk about Black cowboy culture and the opportunity to educate. First of all, let's take this opportunity to do that. Black cowboy culture is something that is not represented and has not been represented as commonly as the cowboy culture that most of the world knows, either through media or Hollywood or through different publications. For everyone who's listening and watching, can you explain Black cowboy culture as it not only what it represents to you, but also what it represents to the horse world as a whole, and why many of us, including myself, until we got to start to meet and until I started doing my own research and educating myself, which I think is right. And I love that you spoke to that, and I'm really looking forward to having that conversation. What is the history of Black cowboy culture? And I know that's a huge question, but like, what is it? Okay, what is something, I think let's demystify for everybody who's listening and watching. Because you said they were the first.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's, I I was doing my research, so on my way here, I was listening to the episode that you did. I keep forgetting her name.
With Jerry.
Jerry
Sheriff.
Jerry Sheriff.
Yeah.
It was just like an awesome episode. And when she got to the part where she mentioned how, you know, there were no black cowboys or cowgirls, you know, when she was, you know, first getting introduced to, you know, horsemanship. And I was like, that's mind blowing to me, because I only saw black cowboys. I never saw white cowboys until later in life, until, you know, a Western would come on the TV. But when I was knee high playing in my grandmother's front yard, surrounded by sugarcane fields, it was 100 black cowboys enjoying their weekend on horses, just going to the corner store and going to have a like party in the field, you know? So my first representation of a cowboy was a black man on a horse, you know, and the older generations pulling a wagon behind them, you know, on wooden wheels, you know. That was my first visual image of a cowboy even. And then later on in life, you know, I started doing my research just to know more about like my culture and, you know, working in film and as a documentarian, and then learning about Hollywood and the role that Hollywood has played in a lot of things in the world, not only in America. And I was like, oh, okay, well, people, you know, there's this, when you look up black cowboys and a lot of the articles that are being written these days about it, because there's a lot of coverage, because Beyonce's doing this and these people are doing that, and you know, there's a Netflix movie, you know, the Black Western, you know, that Jay-Z produced. And so almost the first thing that every article, a major entity, runs to is, did you know in the 1800s 1 in 4 cowboys were black? And to me, that's like a slap in the face, because I'm like, that's bull. Like, that's bull. Because cowboy was a derogatory term that was only used for brown people. The vaqueros, the Native Americans, and the Negroes. Like, that's what the term cowboy was used for. It was the most demanding and degrading manual labor that anybody can do. And that was reserved for the people at the bottom of the totem pole, which were the minorities. Everybody else were cow hands and overseers and, you know, calling shots from like over here, you know. And so in my book, I'm like, every cowboy was black or some variant of, you know, BIPOC, you know, for today's terms. But then Hollywood plays this role where I don't know at what point or what specific moment triggered Hollywood into realizing that being a cowboy was cool or could be cool and could be very marketable. But as soon as they did, you can see the whole shift of the cowboy identity, you know, and we're still feeling the minorities in the horse world are still dealing with the adverse effects of that today, in terms of documentation, in terms of representation, in terms of discrimination. The way I've heard people talk about what they assume about black cowboys and how we care for our animals, or they think that we lack to care for our animals and that we lack in horsemanship, and that, oh, y'all only do it for fun, so there's no real skill involved. And I'm like, have you seen Chris ride? Have you seen the horses that he trains and that he sold, you know? And so now I think it's getting better, but we got a lot of ground to cover, because there were actual large amounts of money put into a different and false narrative.
You said something that really made an impression on me when we were having this conversation in a Waffle House. My first Waffle House experience.
Yeah, how was it?
It was amazing.
Good.
You said that and I'm not going to paraphrase it because I really want you to explain it. But you spoke about what Hollywood took and what Hollywood did not take when they packaged the cowboy narrative for Hollywood or for film storytelling, however we want to refer to it. Can you share with everybody that insight?
Yeah, so I forgot how we got on that topic in Waffle House, but it was something about the morale of people, you know, within this industry or this hobby or this sport. And my answer to you, or my justification, like, to me it felt clear as day. I was like, yeah, I can see why these people lack this connection, or they don't reap all the benefits of what true horsemanship is. And I'm like, it's because they took the name, they took the style, they took the tribal designs and put them on their pads, their shirts, their jeans, and everything you could possibly imagine. But they didn't take the bonding practices, the spiritual connection that like my ancestors would have with their animals. And, you know, it's like they missed that part, you know. So it's almost like, I don't know, you know, it's like a thief, you know, breaking into a bank and, you know, going just robbing one teller's, you know, cashier instead of like going to the actual safe, you know. But I also said that I really feel like that's the universe's way of protecting my people and the people that are really in this for the right reasons. And, you know, we even talked about that too. I was like, I've seen people on high dollar, well-fed horses that I'm like, I would not want that person on my horse's back. Now, I don't care what kind of stall, like, you know, I was like, I would not, because the energy isn't right, you know, and because they only took certain parts of it, you know, and they took in a selfish way, which is why it can't flourish and grow beyond like this surface level. This person has a nice horse, blah, 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 blah. And it stops there. Where the people that are really in this are like, I've learned this from my horse. My life changed through horsemanship. You know, I've made lifelong friends through this, you know, and it shows.
When you said that to me, it made me think about, one, the very ever-present objectivity that we have. We objectify the horse. We objectify the people within the horse industry. Because when we commercialize something, we don't, like you said, when you take the shell of it, you take the look of it, you take the practice of it, you take even the sport aspect, but you do not maintain the culture, you don't maintain the energy, the spirituality of it, then there's a disconnection that takes place.
Yeah.
And it made me, that moment when we were talking, I had this reminder that the more money and resources you have, which is something we are very obsessed with in the horse world, people want more money so that they can do better by their horse.
Right.
And I am continuously reminded in this, when I get to connect in communities like the one we're in right now, that more money does not necessarily equal better horsemanship, or does not necessarily equal better everything. That the money can actually cause a disconnection.
Yeah.
And an objectivity, right? That really, really rang true for me in that moment when you were talking about how Hollywood took the look and the narrative and the story, but they didn't take the spirituality, the connection, and all the aspects of the roots of where these practices and where these ways of horsemanship and the history of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's like a one, it's like, I mean, this is a representation of the world we live in now. We have, in a lot of ways, a homogenous history. There's so many narratives and there's so many histories that we're not informed about.
Yeah. Intentionally, it's because somewhere throughout the timeline, of history, some groups of people with resources, with influence, with platforms made conscious decisions to sway people's perspective one way, instead of over another.
And I'm really glad you brought up you just 5 minutes ago, you said, we have these tribal patterns on our saddle pads.
Yeah.
And we don't know where they come from.
No, yeah, zero idea.
Like, I do not.
Yeah.
I do not know.
Even the color science behind them. I'm like, people don't even understand like how significant the colors that are associated with Western culture. And I'm like,
okay, can you share a little bit of that? Because I don't know that. And as you said that, it just punched me in the face. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Native American history in the U.S. is very complex as well. And I will in no way, shape or form pretend to be an expert on that. I'm just familiar with a lot of Native American culture and history, specifically in regards to Louisiana. But I'll bring up a moment that we had yesterday when we were riding with my good friend Shelby, who I love. She's in my film. And I've learned a lot from her, just like hanging out with her over the past few years when we got to know each other. And she mentioned something about the colors that I had on.
Yeah, she did.
Which was like, I mean, it was a bold choice. And I didn't plan an outfit as much as this is just the type of stuff that I'll wear. It's like usually within this color palette or whatever. And she was like, Drake, if anybody else had that on, like, they'd look like a fool. But she was like, you pulling it off? And I was like, let me tell you. I was like, I had a burgundy shirt on, and I was like, burgundy is synonymous with Creole culture, throughout the world, actually, which that gets into this very complex of like, why does the Creole culture in Haiti mirror Louisiana Creole culture so much, even though it's pretty significantly different? And they kind of like happened at different times, and across, like, there was no Wi-Fi and Instagram, when these cultures were being developed. But like, even though Louisiana Creole, French, and Haitian Creole isn't the same, like, they can talk to each other and understand each other, right? And a lot of the colors and a lot of the designs are like the same. So it's the same thing with, the like turquoise and burgundy specifically were colors of royalty, specifically for like minorities, Native Americans, and Creoles across the world. And like, when you go anywhere near the equator, you'll see that. When you look at the clothing and the handmade crafts from like the African tribes, it's like a lot of orange, right? When you look at the houses in the Caribbean and also the houses in New Orleans, like, the old Creole style homes in New Orleans, it's like orange, teal, turquoise, burgundy. And then when you look at the saddle pads and you look at the jewelry that the Native Americans were, collecting and making, it was silver, turquoise,
Yeah.
It's intriguing. And it's like, what is the universe doing? We don't know, but.
Well, and that's something so I'm so glad you brought up, like, do we understand why we have these tribal prints on our saddle pads? And when I was recently speaking with Indigenous elders at an event, we were talking about how it reminded me, do we understand the origins of what we do? And it reminded me of how a lot of Indigenous horse communities, historically horse tribes within North America, would wear turquoise because it's a protection stone.
Yeah.
So we wear turquoise, different subsects of the horse world will wear turquoise because it's fashionable, because we like it, because we actually think of it as being synonymous with cowgirl fashion.
Right.
But actually,
It was spiritual.
It was spiritual. Turquoise is a stone that warriors would wear going into battle so that they would stay protected and stay on their horse. It was a stone specifically worn because they believed it had the energy to protect you and to keep you up on atop your horse during battle.
Yeah. And even a lot of those tribal designs on the pads that cost way too much money, but I love them. I'm like, I'll still buy them. Those were the designs that the Native Americans were painting on their horses before there were saddle pads. Like that was like the war paint. And I don't know the specifics behind the symbolism and what each shape, meant, but like those diamonds, triangles, and dots, that was war paint on the horses. And I actually have a book. I'll send you, I have some awesome books, and I was like, I thought about it on the way here. I was like, I should have grabbed these just so you can put your eyes on them and see them. But one of them is like, it's a picture book, because I don't like to read, of horse, I don't even know it's like horse costumes, how different cultures, warriors, etc. dress their horses.
Oh, cool.
Over like 1,000-year period or something crazy. So it's like how the Chinese would dress their horses up for war, what the Native Americans were doing over here, how these, and it's like,
oh, cool.
when you start to flip through those pictures, you're like, oh my God, I get why these reins look like this now. Oh my God, I get why these saddle pads have these designs. And like, it's mind blowing because it just puts it all in one collective place. Because we know about it.
Yes.
Like we know the Chinese were putting stuff on their horses too.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
For a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And we know the Spanish were doing it. We know the Native Americans were doing it. But like when you see a visual representation of it all in one place, it's like things really start to click. And that's one way I feel very lucky for the lifestyle that I have, because I get to work as like a documentarian and a photographer. Mm-hmm. But I get to, my ADHD brain gets to like connect the dots via visuals because I study and look at the visuals all day, every day. Yes.
It actually reminds me of something that I saw Jordan speak to on a 60 Minutes interview. And he said that maintaining the culture of our communities is really, and I'm sorry, Jordan, I'm like subphrasing, like I'm paraphrasing you here. So I hope I do a good job. I hope I do it justice.
Yeah.
He said in the way that he does, in a very powerful way, he said that we must, and there was a huge emphasis on we must maintain the culture of our communities, and that anyone who's doing that, is doing something really important in the world. And we can't become like, and what I gleaned from that interview was we don't want to become like a homogenous, glob of the human species. We want to honor all the different subsects and all the different cultures and all the different communities and the history. And something that I feel, and I'm really curious what you think about this, do you think that the horse world honors its, because I think there's a connection here that I'm really starting to understand, it's kind of falling into place, is in order to honor a community, you have to maintain its culture. In order to maintain its culture, you have to understand its history.
Yeah.
Whether we're deep in the Rocky Mountains or down in the heat of Florida, we trust Yeti products on this journey of a lifetime. From the Rode 48 cooler to the Yeti mugs you see right here in the studio, Yeti coolers and drinkware are built tough, smooth, and ready for anything the horse world has in store for us. In order to honor a community, you have to maintain its culture. In order to maintain its culture, you have to understand its history.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a saying that's existed. Again, that's something that's so familiar to me and feels equally ingrained in my brain as the lines that I had to write when I would like get in trouble in school and they make you like write lines 100 times.
Yeah.
So my parents would always say, like, you have to know where you're coming from before you know where you're going. Like, you have to. Like there was never an opportunity in my life for that not to be my perspective on my family history, the history of my land, the people around me, my community. Is like, you have to know where you were before you, like, in any way that they can say it. You have to know where you were before you know where you can go. You have to know who you come from before you know who you can be. And I can tell you the exact moment with that 60 Minutes episode is like Jordan's slogan that he lives by, that a lot of our peers we share. It's just a newer manifestation of like that same thing of knowing where you come from to know where you're going. He'd say, tu vis ta culture, tu tues ta culture, il n'a pas milieu, which means you either live your culture or you kill your culture, and there's no in between. And like, that's our gospel, you know. So we all, thankfully, the people that I'm around and the people that I spend my time with, like, we live by that, you know. And it's a merging of the old school, the tradition, the new school, you know, adapting to today's economy, to today's communities. But yeah, it's like, know where you come from and live it and breathe it honestly, and it'll show in everything that you do, including your horsemanship. You know, and it in my opinion, it makes life easier. You know, I'm not wasting energy on presenting something that I'm not. Like, I can just wake up and be me. I know it, my friends know it, my horse knows it, you know, my mama knows it, like, it's fine, you know. And whoever it's not fine with, 9 times out of 9, it's somebody I don't need to be around anyway, you know. Or if there's a scene where that isn't welcome, 9 times out of 9, that's a place that I don't need to be anyway. Is how my life has turned out to be. And even Chris spoke on that last night when we were kind of, you know, after we wrapped up the ride, you know, he was just like, I'm just doing my thing. Like, I'm just truly being me, doing my thing. And whatever's meant to be a part of that story will fall into place and be there. And whatever's not meant to be there, if it is there, it won't be there for long if it's not meant to.
Let's actually do a shout out to Chris.
Yeah, Chris.
We're talking about Chris.
I love Chris.
So
yeah.
Chris, his full name is Chris Lewis.
Yeah, Christopher Lewis. Yeah.
And we're here on his farm.
Yeah.
On his ranch.
Yeah.
And Chris develops reining horses, and specifically a lot of futurity horses.
Yeah.
And we just both, I think we're both big. I mean, I know he's a good friend of yours, but
yeah.
I just think he is just an awesome human. So a big shout out to Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris, he has so much to offer. And I think one of the things that me and Chris connected on first, I first met him to do my film. I just kind of, you know, would see him on the trail rides. And I think we connected because we both, even though we're like 2 different generations or whatever, we both, at a lot of moments in our life, felt like the odd man out. You know, where there wasn't that many people, if anybody, specifically in this area, talking about or doing the work to get into training reining horses.
Right.
Like, that wasn't really a thing. We're just like, Cowboys, we go trail ride, we go dance a little bit, go, you know, maybe a few of us go do rodeos and bronc riding, whatever, you know, barrel racing, whatever.
Yeah.
Reining was like foreign, you know, to a lot of people in this community, I think, until Chris introduced it. And, you know, with me just kind of like being a young guy, and, you know, most of my peers have either get legitimate degrees and become nurses or engineers, or they went work offshore, you know, for oil and gas. It was like the 3 things that almost everybody in my generation ended up doing. And I was like, I think I'm gonna go be a photographer, part-time musician, and like try to fit horses somewhere in there.
I love it.
You know? And so me and Chris, we connected because we both dream really big, and we have this vision for what our culture could be. And we have clear paths on how we can change a lot of the stereotypes, the discrimination, just by being present in those spaces and being better than most and hopefully the best at what we do. And at the same time that we're changing the outsiders' perspectives of what Black and Creole Cowboys are and what we're capable of, and reminding them that we have a right to be here more so than most people, but also teaching the young kids in our neighborhood, like, hey, basketball, football, working offshore, that's not your only option. You can also do this. There's also an industry here. Like, yeah, this is a part of our culture and something that we do for fun on weekends, but like there's an industry here. So if you really put your mind to it, the same way you could be a successful engineer, you could be a successful horse trainer.
And that you have a right because you are part of a group of people. You are part of a history, even though it's not represented. It is the original horse stewards are people of color. Yeah.
We're more entitled to it than anybody else. And it's not that we should live in that entitlement, but if you needed some motivation of like, go chase your childhood dreams of being a cowboy, it's like, chances are your great whatever was one and was the one, you know. So.
And had a history and had practices that they're the white community, the people that they worked for did not have that same connection with those animals. They did not have the same connection with horses. And I think that's such an important antithesis to the imposter syndrome that many people of color talk about, or many BIPOC individuals in the horse world speak about. It's an important thing to say really boldly in this episode, is that you are not, historically, you are not a minority, even though you may feel like one right now.
Right. Yeah.
Because that is very real at the moment, as I feel like there has been a lot of conversation about the feeling, and you even spoke about this, and I actually think it's important that we draw on this. You said we are still feeling the repercussions of the misrepresentation or the lack of representation of people of color as horsemen and horsewomen. Yeah. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, being that I work so much of my work is centered around culture and history and what's been mislabeled and what needs to be relabeled or whatever. I think when you talk about things like gentrification, and when this conversation comes up with my Black friends, my white friends, I know a lot of business owners and, people that fulfill all different types of role within an economy, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to talk about gentrification if we can't talk about what makes it bad, because there's some benefits. Be careful where you clip this, because I don't want to get canceled. But, I was like, there's some benefits, but it's like we need to talk about what actually makes it bad.
So wait, before you go in that, what is gentrification? Let's explain.
Gentrification, I guess we keep dibbling in terms that are areas that aren't super horse related, but gentrification, when you talk about the development of a town, is like,
right.
When I think it used to only be labeling in terms of like property and what people would do with like physical, tangible property. But I think the term gentrification has also grown into a more broader definition that can be applied to cultural practices, traditions, or whatever. Yes. But it's when one demographic takes something from another demographic, whether it's a style, an area of a neighborhood, cultural practice, and then that demographic that took it benefits off of it tremendously, and it's at the expense of the demographic that they got it from.
Okay, got it.
So when you bring that up with people, or when I bring that up with people, there are talks about, well, nobody was doing anything about this anyway. Or nobody was making films about the trail rides anyway, so I just shot my shot, right? And I'm like, okay, because I was inspired by it. And I was like, yes, be inspired by it. That's great. Pay homage to where you got it from. Make sure that by you benefiting off of something that you did not create can, at a minimum, at a bare minimum, for the sake of morale, benefit the people that you got it from or the people that inspired you. Right?
Right.
So I feel like there's a lack of that, you know, and some people are soft-hearted or whatever, and if you even hint at the fact that they may be gentrifying or taking something from someone's culture at the expense of that person, it's like, nah, I would never. That's not my intention. I'm like, yeah, you may not intend that, but if you aren't careful with your actions, you can still end up doing a lot of harm and damage. And so I think there's a lack of that overall, especially in America. But I think that exists that it definitely exists in horse culture as well.
Absolutely.
Just why I'm like, hey, y'all want to make the paths with the tribal designs? Like, that's fine, but can we at least educate people on can a percentage of those paths go to the tribes, please?
Yeah.
Right. If y'all,
and that is a perfect example of gentrification.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have this event in your rodeo, you know, like bulldogging, that was like invented by a black man, and you know that black rodeos and black horse riders are at a like huge disparity compared to their white counterparts, a huge disadvantage compared to their white counterparts. Can y'all just like throw a little check
Yeah.
to the scholarship fund, something,
Yeah.
you know, to help out? I'm not asking you to foot the bill, but it's saying just pay homage to where you got this stuff from, because I think that's how you truly build community. I feel like that's how you bridge the gaps that exist between different groups of people. I feel like that's how you actually solve it, you know?
Absolutely.
So
when I say, and this is something that's very prevalent, so I believe that the horse world is actually in a bit of a cultural crisis at the moment. There's a lot of subsects within the horse world that are having like a existential crisis. Where are we going? What are we doing? Are we still, what we do, is it still relevant? Is it still in the best interest of the horse? There's a lot of questions being asked right now. And this is an important question, and I really want everyone who's listening, I really want everyone in the horse world to hear this, because it's an important, I think there's a lot to learn about preserving and honoring our culture and the different subsects that exist. What advice would you have to everyone who's listening and people who are having those conversations, people are witnessing the way that they ride or how they ride or the sport that they exist in or whatever is being questioned and challenged and potentially modified, changed, and in a lot of cases changed and modified for the better. But I feel like there's an element that people feel attacked. They feel like their community, their culture, their sport is being changed without their permission or without their control. What advice would you have for those people in the horse industry?
Well, I have a lot to say about that. Because I almost feel like, I mean, what you're doing with the Deer Horse World, you get to experience so many different parts of the horse world. And like, when you said, my instinct when you made that statement that, you know, the horse world feels threatened in a way, is like, is this staying? Like, what's happening to it? Is this change good or bad? I'm like, I don't feel that at all. I don't feel like my peers really feel that at all, or not nearly as much, because horse culture in Louisiana with the black community is thriving. You know, it's thriving. There's new horses being born every day.
Yeah.
There's more people, you know. The ride that we had the day before y'all got in town, I have this video I'll show you on my phone later. It's like 3 babies on a horse by themselves.
I saw that clip. It's amazing.
our culture isn't going nowhere because we've already survived so much opposition, criticism, judgment. We faced all that pandemic, fluctuating economy, and it has thrived through all of that. So my horse world, I don't feel like it's threatened at all. I can understand how the broader scope of the horse world, especially across America or throughout the world, and I have some friends that are in the horse culture in France, and like they're doing their thing. I can see how they feel kind of like feel that pressure. And what I would say is I would have a statement and a question of as far as advice goes. And I'd say my statement is, stay true and honest to the craft and to your peers, which leads into my question of whatever it is that community fears, is there any way that you were that fear to someone else before that became a fear for yourself?
Ooh. I'm just going to let that sit there for a second. That's a really good question. Because another thing that I see very present and prevalent in the horse world as well is a lot of people have reached out, and I even spoke about this in my podcast episode with Carolyn Culbertson, is a lot of people in the horse world exist in community, but they feel very alone.
Yeah.
They do not feel connected to something. They feel very connected to their horses or their horse, but there are lots of environments in the horse world in which people either they do not feel part of a community. There are many parts of the horse world in which people feel very much part of something, very, very much. And I think these are even communities that are not on social media. They're not famous. They're not going to the Olympics. They're just, they're really organic grassroots sub-communities within the horse world of like-minded people that come together and they thrive together.
Yeah.
And there are lots of people that have written into this podcast. There are lots of people that have written into us on social media that say, I feel alone. I don't feel part of something. I feel very bonded and very connected to my horse. And I feel very passionate about this way of life. And I feel very passionate about my identity as a horse person. But I do not feel part of something. What advice would you have to them? Or what words of encouragement, actually, better yet, what words of encouragement would you have for them if they are craving community and craving being part of something, but they do not feel that is present in their environment?
Move to Louisiana.
I wondered if you might say that.
Yeah, I think, I mean that in all seriousness, but also I think...
Yeah, you really genuinely mean that.
What we have is special here, which is why I'll never ever leave. Like, I'll travel for work and even for leisure, but it's like there's always a moment where I'm ready to come back home. And people are like, why? You could make so much more money doing what you're doing if you just like move anywhere else in the country.
Right.
And I'm like, community. I know who's at the gas station right now. Like, I know what time my friends go pick up their boudin, on their lunch break, or
Yeah.
It's like that essence of community that even me, single guy, when a lot of my friends are like having babies and like buying their homes and starting families or whatever right now, and I'm like, it's just like I got a few things and a horse and a few acres, and like that's pretty much it, But it's like I have friends like Chris, I have friends like Jordan, and the community aspect, I think, is the thread that holds a lot of us together here. It's a part of our culture. It's a part of our tradition. Our different communities mixing from different parishes, from different, Cajuns to Creoles to Native Americans. That has always, always, always been the theme of Louisiana has been us coming together and supporting each other and trying to find more likeness than differences. For people that don't have access to that and don't have the means to move to Louisiana, I tell them, I think it does get lonely a lot of times, and I think that that's a part of the journey. But I genuinely feel like if you stay true to yourself and honest with your peers, that like your tribe will find you. Because even me living here in Louisiana, there was a point in time where I felt dangerously lonely. And I was like, who are my friends? Like, what are the people that I'm spending time with is not what I envisioned for myself. I don't go to sleep or wake up feeling good about it. It's not that they're bad people, but I'm like, this isn't what I need. I wasn't put here to socialize with these people. And that got really challenging and tough for me for a while. And I had to take a step back. At some moments I had to slow myself down. At other moments I had to just like work and stay busy. But just being true to my heart and heart-led decisions that I had, now I'm like, you can't buy the kind of friends that I have. You can't. You called me and was like, hey, we're kind of trying to figure out where to turn around a 60-foot trailer. And I was like, hold up, I got this.
Yeah, and you did.
One phone call, done.
Yeah.
Y'all don't, it's too hot to ride there today, let's do something tomorrow. One phone call is done. We're out on the boat, we're in the basin, and you're getting like an experience that you won't get anywhere else.
It's so true.
So it's like, I can't buy the type of friends that I have right now, you know? But there was a moment where I didn't have them, or I wasn't as close with them, or I didn't realize that they were so much more my tribe than the other people that I was around or trying to figure things out with. So the only way I feel like I was able to find that is by being true to myself and honest with my peers. And I think when you do those two things, and the same thing with a horse, like I always tell my friends, the only thing a horse needs, like really, really, really needs, is time and intention. And I feel like with those two things, anything is possible with any horse, with mare, stud, walker, quarter horse, doesn't matter, right? And I feel like that transfers over into friendship, into community, into family, you know, time and intention.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking about, there's a lot of people in the horse world, me included, that have found themselves in environments or in moments or in points in time in which they're not actually being honest with themselves, and therefore they cannot be honest with their peers. They might be doing something or participating in something that doesn't sit right with them. They might be being asked to do something with horses that makes them really uncomfortable, and they're afraid. And literally, I've been afraid to speak up before, and I know many people in the horse world have shared with me that they feel afraid to speak up and be honest about what is true in their heart. And they might be afraid because of the repercussions. They might be afraid because if they speak up, they might not be able to train with that person. They might have attachment to that style or that status of what they do with horses. If someone like that was sitting across from you in the studio, what would you say? What would you say to them about how to be brave? Because you say two things: be true to yourself and be true with your peers. Be honest with your peers, right? Those are two really powerful things that you can feel, and I'm going to emphasize this to everybody. You can feel that. It gives me goosebumps being here. This community is exactly that. And you can feel it in the genuineness of the conversations that you have, even with the Huval brothers in Tante Marie Cafe. It's
Yeah.
powerful, and it's such a breath of fresh air in this moment in time we are in our history as a human species. There's so much going on around the world, not just in the horse world. There's a lot going on in the horse world, and there's a lot going on outside the horse world.
Yeah.
And these two pillars of truth that you're inviting for all of us is be honest and true to yourself, and be honest and true with your peers. For those that are struggling with that, what do you say to them?
Well, I'd say what works for me in moments that I have to find a way to be brave or more brave is that I don't ever try to get rid of a fear, because I'm not good at it. Because usually my fear is justified. I'm like, nah, that's pretty scary. Like, you have good reason to be, I'm a reasonable person, right? So I never tried to get rid of a fear. I try to find something that I fear more. And so, for example, with our culture, right, with Creole culture in Louisiana, there's a lot of opinion, there's a lot of criticism from within the culture and from people outside of the culture, right? Which can be very fearful, because politics comes into play, work opportunities comes into play, and relationships with your friends and family and all that stuff comes into play. And that's a very frightening thing. And what I had to do to overcome that and to put my head down and to be able to continue to serve my community in the ways that I envision and I feel like I was put here to do is that I had to find something that I feared more. And what I feared more is my culture being lost. It is my community falling apart and not being able to sustain and flourish through the ongoing changes of the world. I feared that more than any criticism that could have came my way. Horsemanship and, learning it, and the fear of being judged or the fear of being kicked and bitten.
Yeah.
Right?
They're very real.
Very real fears, justified fears. I'm like, I know if I get kicked, something might break.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna hurt, right?
Yeah.
But what I feared more is never being able to know that joy of having a bond like that with these majestic creatures. Never. I could have paid the money to, I know the people. I could have sent my horse to Chris. Like, Chris, here,
Yeah.
get my horse right for me so I could just come back 30, 60 days from now and, be riding a Cadillac, right? But what I feared is, not knowing the fulfillment and the magic of that moment of, I did the work on this horse. I got him to this point. He wasn't here when I started him. I wasn't here as a rider when I got him. I feared not knowing what that fulfillment felt like.
Yeah.
And so it's every time I was like, what do you fear more? And I think if you can really ask yourself that, I think that's what works for me as far as all right, now I'm ready to get shit done. Because I found something that I fear more. There's always something bigger and badder out there. So yeah, this is scary, but there's something that I fear a little bit more that's going to allow me to just power through it and make it happen by any means,
At what point did you realize that, because you said, when you grew up and you were knee high, all you saw were black cowboys. When did you realize that the horse world did not only look or feel like your horse world, or know about black cowboy culture? When did you realize that, and how did that feel?
Man, it's weird because what you're talking about is racial disparity in a sense. And as a young black kid growing up in the South, my assumption and rightful assumption about everything was that existed everywhere. Like, you just already assume that like that exists in any industry, any store, any workplace, any hobby, any sport. You know, you already assume that
racial disparity exists there.
Yeah, you know, because when I did flag football, it's like pretty much only black kids. Like, that's just, I went to school in, you know, mixed settings, but, you know, anything in my neighborhood, anything outside of my actual education was like, these are all black people and Creole people, and this is what we're doing. And like, you know, there's probably a white equivalent somewhere. We just don't know what it looks like, don't really care, because we got our own stuff right here, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the horse world, it really didn't set in with me until I started working on Footwork, which was, I started that in 2021 or 2022, like right after the pandemic and the quarantine ended, was when I started that film. And then as I was telling people about it, they were just curious as far as like, they knew me from other stuff, whether it was from music or just my commercial work as a filmmaker. And they're like, so what are you working on these days? I'm like, well, actually, I'm making like a film, and it's one of the bigger films that I've done. And they're like, there's black cowboys? There was two questions that would always come up, and they're like, are there really cowboys in Louisiana? And I'm like, that's a crazy question. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, granted, some of these people aren't horse people. Some of them are. Whatever. I let that one slide. You know? And the other question is like, but there are black cowboys? I'm like, are you kidding? First of all, you're talking to one. Like, just because I didn't ride my horse here, I mean, like.
Yeah, just because I didn't ride my horse here.
You know, I grew up in this, like, this is, I eat, breathe, and sleep this. And me and my friends, we would skip school. In middle school, we would find ways to leave to like go to the trail rides and hang out with the other black cowboys, because we just love that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't skating rings and bowling alleys and laser tags and stuff like that for us, and skateboarding. It was horses and four-wheelers. Like, that's what it was, right? Yeah. And dancing. And so that's when it really set in, was when I started working on my film. And I was like, oh my, like, people are legitimately asking if there's cowboys in Louisiana to this day. Like, even if they knew, they'd be like, yeah, but like today. And I'm like, yes.
Wow.
I mean, unless your definition of a cowboy is only somebody that works cattle from the saddle, and I'm like, that's not nearly, there's a lot of people that qualify as cowboys that wouldn't fit into that category in my book.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm like, if you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, no. Like, there's not that many, you know. But horse people?
Horsemen, horsewomen?
Horsemen, horsewomen? Horse babies?
Horse babies? Like those 3 babies?
I'm like, it don't Sunday? I'm like, how much more cowboy does it get than that, right?
Yeah.
You know, and people that are tending to the land and you know, training and learning these animals. I was like, yeah, there's a huge group of us, you know. And so it really didn't set in until a few years ago. I was like, oh, these people really don't get it.
And how did that feel? Because I think one of the fundamental needs, and we talk about this in my episode with Dewey Friedman, is that as human beings, we want to be seen, heard, felt, and gotten.
Yeah.
And in that moment, you do not feel seen, heard, felt, and gotten.
Yeah. Well, I think the beautiful part about what we have in Louisiana is like going back to that being true and honest to yourself and also your peers, is that we love what we got going on, whether the West accepts that there's cowboys out here or not. Like, we riding on the levee and the swamps. We eating some of the best food you can find in the world.
I will attest to that, you guys. The food here is some of the best I've ever eaten in my life.
In the world. Like, it's competitively good,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, again, our culture, not to say that there were moments that there's definitely moments in our history where it's felt threatened, but like right now, it ain't one of them moments. And I'm like, we're good. will share to open ears, open minds, open hearts. And anybody's welcome, you know, as long as you don't come with any nonsense. It's like the doors are open. You've seen that. Y'all have witnessed that.
Absolutely.
Coming here.
Unbelievably.
And it's like Louisiana's kind of always been its own thing and self-sustaining, and we don't really need to be accepted. We don't yearn for that acceptance on a large scale, because our Sundays are still gonna pop off the way they need to, regardless, you know. So, but when there's an opportunity, you know, like what we talked about earlier, if there is an opportunity to educate someone and to open them up to that type of experience, and they're actually willing, then like, great, everybody wins. They learn something new, they get to see a different part of it, and we chip away a little bit at correcting the narrative, you know. But in the meantime, we're still just like having fun and saddling up. So
yeah, I feel like that's actually a really powerful call to action or invitation for the horse world that we can glean a lot from Creole cowboy culture is, are you, so there's like this amazing piece that I love, which is, you know, for everyone who listens, whoever is listening and watching understands when I say when someone is triggered, right? So
I'll take a sip on that one.
Okay, so when you're triggered, there's a beautiful statement in the personal growth community space conversation that when you are triggered, thank that person who triggered you, because they get to show you where you are not free.
Yeah.
And when you are talking and you're saying like, we exist, we are self-sustaining, we don't need your acceptance because we are thriving here, regardless of whether you are aware of our existence or not.
Yeah.
And I just felt like a moment of going, how many sub-communities within the horse world are not free because their existence or their presence is based off of the acceptance of others, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes me think of this, that is such a powerful thought, and something to really, for us as a community as a whole, and then the sub-communities that we exist within, is if you feel threatened or you feel triggered, how is that moment showing you where you are not free?
Yeah, that's deep. I mean, I'm gonna implement that into my daily practices and mantras, because
it's a practice. I tell you,
valid point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a practice, because being triggered is a hard one, and I get, you know, like everybody, I get triggered so much. You know, plenty in moments that I feel I'm lacking, in moments that I feel like I don't have the knowledge to meet that moment. You know, there's so many moments in which that happens. And as you're talking, I felt that's a really powerful place to be as a community. Is we do not need your acceptance. We are honest with ourselves, and we walk through this world. And I think what's important in all of this, and I would say this, and you really experience the way we've been accepted into this community and invited into this community, is also, let's walk with integrity through that, right? Like, if you're honest with yourself and you're honest with your peers, then that, I think, is that is a fundamental step towards integrity. And I think the horse world has so much to learn, both from this conversation, but from sub-communities of the horse world that don't look for outside acknowledgement or acceptance to exist.
Right.
Because they're true to themselves and they're true to their peers.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of them, but I also do champion within my community of, like, when the spotlight does come, like, know what to do with it, know what to do with those moments. And, you know, if there is someone that is looking to acknowledge us, like, get good at discernment and knowing what their intentions are and deciding if that's something that can benefit our culture or hurt it, or is it neutral. You know, so it's like I champion that within our community too, of like, no one knows, recognize those moments. And even though we aren't exerting energy going looking for that, know when it is, when it does arrive, because it may be, you know, God putting the right things in front of you or the right people in front of you at the right time. And so it's a balance, you know, it's a balance with anything. But, you know, as horse people, we already broke. So I'm like, we can't go out chasing this. Like, we just literally can't afford to. I'm like, we literally can't afford to go out chasing acknowledgement. I'm like, we got bills to pay. We got hay to bail. You know, we got feed buckets to fill up. I'm like, we can't afford to do that. Literally, we can't afford to do it. So know how to have discernment. Work on your discernment when those moments do come. And in the meantime, stay true to yourself and to your culture, and like the rest will, you know, happen how it needs to happen.
Actually, an amazing way to wrap this episode is, I asked you what advice you had for people who feel lonely. And I actually think that the rest of us and the horse community as a whole can learn a lot about how you guys gather for trail rides.
Okay.
Because I think there's something really powerful about, like yesterday, we were walking through the streets of Henderson, walking the sugarcane fields.
Right.
In the parish of St. Martin in
Right.
Louisiana.
Right.
Just talking about life and about horses and about, and also just being silent together, being present in this really just incredible, for me, it was an incredible moment. It was a very powerful moment. And the horses are super relaxed and they're, you know what I mean? And it's just like,
Yeah.
I was thinking about a new friend of mine. Her handle on Instagram is broke ass horse girl, I think it is.
Oh my God, I love that girl.
Right?
She's awesome.
Okay,
She's
so
awesome.
Michelle, we're doing a shout out. She's gonna die when she.
Yeah, she's
okay,
awesome.
We're doing a shout out to Michelle. Michelle posted on social media, and she got 15 women together to ride on the beach.
Yeah.
And she said she just did one casual post, and they all got together. All these people she didn't know, right? And I was messaging her, and so I was like, "This is amazing that you did this."
Yeah.
And I actually think that another big takeaway for everyone who's listening or watching, and you have felt lonely, or you currently feel lonely or alone in your community, is I think actually that is where social media is actually really helpful.
Yeah.
Because I see that you'll post on social, "Hey, we're doing a ride on this Sunday. Come to this in this place," right?
Yeah.
And I thought, and Michelle was like, she was just, you could tell, she was just like buzzing from this, you know, unique experience. And it doesn't actually have to be unique. It can actually be everyday or mainstay. It can be a way to connect with other like-minded horsemen or horsewomen because you're being true to yourself and true to your peers. You can say, hey, you know, I think that really, because the trail rides that you guys do, and you should tell everybody, like sometimes they are hundreds.
Oh, thousands
of people
Yeah.
come together
Yeah.
and ride.
Yeah, the trail rides, you know, it's funny because a lot of criticism that came on Creole and Black Cowboys was that we only do it socially. And I'm like, well, actually, that's why our horsemanship and the amount of people that participate and practice it excels any other demographic in Louisiana.
Right.
Honestly, you know, it's because we also made it fun and really cool, and it turned into like this social scene where you can meet people, you can hang out, you know, you might meet the love of your life. Like it's all of that, like, you know, it's like at the trail rides, right? Because there's so many like-minded people and families from adjacent parishes and like all these great things, right? And you know, due to the changing political scape of the country as a whole, when I was younger, the trail rides used to be even bigger. Like right now, it's like a big trail ride would be like 2 days and you know, maybe around 5,000 to 7,000 people, you know, and maybe 1,000 horse riders or whatever. But back in my heyday, whatever. Which wasn't that long ago, honestly, but
Really wasn't.
But it's like it was 4-day trail rides, and people from Mississippi and Texas and wherever would all along the Gulf Coast would come in on a Thursday, and then we would have a live band playing music every night and a DJ. So if there wasn't a band on stage, there was a DJ playing, and there's people selling food and handmade tack and you know, and people cooking by their trailers, you know, on propane burners and cast iron pots, and then like four-wheelers and thousands of horses and people buying it. It created this mini economy because it's like, you want to sell your horse? Go to the trail ride, go to Step and Strut, go to Big 8, you know, and then like you can show these people, you know, your stock that you've been working on all year and how healthy it is, and you know, And so I think that's a integral part in how our culture and the history of it has been able to sustain itself, is that we made it really cool and fun. And you have to shout out Zydeco music. Like the music and the dance is a huge part of that.
Absolutely.
And they work with each other, you know, because the people that were making the Zydeco music were the farmers, the sharecroppers, the cowboys, you know. And so it's like they knew hard work, they do manual labor. They were all real comfortable with being outside, you know, and comfortable with these animals. And so like it all feeds itself, you know. And so a lot of my friends will ask me, you know, I'm the horse guy in my friend group that aren't the, you know, my friends that aren't the horse riders, that are horse people, like I'm the horse guy to them, right? And they're like, man, like, when can we go ride? When, you know, when's the next time to do this? I'm like, every Sunday. For the black cowboy in Louisiana, being in the saddle, sometime Sunday afternoon is like church for us. We will be there, guaranteed, somewhere, you know. And so of course in cooler months or whatever, we have these bigger rides, you know, where it's like more choreographed efforts and people come together. But every Sunday, and we may not have a live band, but somebody got that Bluetooth speaker on the back of they, you know, sitting on the top of their saddlebags, like, you know, playing the music, you know. And there's always somebody that's down and willing to cook, you know. It's just like, that's the thing. So we all grew up doing that, and it is not diminished at all whatsoever. Everybody my age can cook. A lot of them are familiar with horses, familiar with trail rides. They know the dance. They, you know, a lot of them know how to work the animals and have horses on their own. And so it's like, it ain't going nowhere anytime soon. So y'all come on down to Louisiana. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah.
Okay, so to close out every episode, I ask the same series of questions to my guests.
Okay.
I'm really excited to hear yours. If you could read one book to the horse world, what would it be?
Oh, man. This one, I'm going to totally misquote the title.
That's okay.
But it's something about like the cowboys or the black cowboys along the Gulf Coast and the cattle frontier of America. It's specifically about what happened before the West.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of people aren't ready for that conversation.
Yeah. Who is the most iconic horse in history?
Who? Oh, man. I would have to say, this is new in my book, but I would have to say Secretariat, because I was doing a lot of research into the trainers and the people that were working them, and yeah, that's my answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's a good one. It's a few people have given that answer.
Yeah, it feels
He's
cliche,
iconic.
but
well,
yeah.
No, because I think so. Racehorses, Far Lap, Secretariat, Seabiscuit, War Admiral.
Yeah.
This was a time in which racing held a really, talk about culture. Racing held a very important place in the larger, wider American culture and society. And horses like Seabiscuit, horses like Secretariat, they captured the nation's attention during very troubled times. And they represented something. And that's when horses, I think horses, they surpass, they reach a pinnacle of symbolism, and they represent something to us as humans when they become a symbol. And I think Secretariat was a symbol to many people.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think it's a good answer.
Yeah.
What is the most undervalued skill as a rider or as a horseman?
Most undervalued skill, probably maybe an unpopular take. I think getting your horse to stay perfectly still on command. Mm-hmm. I've seen horses of all different training levels, different breeds or whatever. And then like even some of the best trained horses, like they still kind of get that little stutter. Like they're stopped, but they're like, they get that little stutter step. the type of riding that we do, when there's like wild hogs and alligators at your 6 and your 12,
Yeah.
you're like, no, this horse don't understand that a inch difference could be life or death for both of us.
Right.
So in my riding and like the type of riding we do is like that more than anything, more than being able to turn, more than being able to go in reverse, more than any cool trick that you can do, more than being able to run fast. I've seen personally second and third hand of like being able to keep that horse perfectly still or the lack thereof is like fate determining when you're out in the real world. I'm not talking about dirt tracks and whatever. I'm talking about
Or
like
arenas.
Right. I'm talking about any other environment you can be riding
yeah.
a horse in.
Who is the greatest horseman or horsewoman in history?
In history, I hate these rapid fire questions. It's so hard. I'm going to say Chris. And the reason why is because how much I've been able to learn from him and having that personal connection. I know that there's many great horse trainers and horse riders out there. And I know that like even Chris, he'll say himself that like, you know, he's still learning or whatever. But it's like my greatest of all time is going to be him just because of how open he is to sharing and educating and what he does for the community. Yeah.
Okay, last question. Mares, stallions, or geldings?
Ooh, how did I not see that question coming? I can't pick. I can't.
Why?
I think again, I believe that with time and intention, any horse can be brought to any level and taught to damn near do anything. I truly do believe that, regardless of breed, regardless of gender, gelded or not. And I personally just don't feel like I've had equal enough time on all three to be able to truly decide even what my preference is, because I've ridden studs that I've loved, I've ridden mares that I love, you know, I've been on the mare for the past 3 days, and like I personally have like 2 geldings now, and I'm like, you know, so I don't think I have enough time on all 3 of them equally to be like, oh, this is what I prefer. But like I just love a good horse, and I love a horse that feels like they've been given the time and the intention and the respect that they deserve, and like it shows in that horse, you know, regardless of what's between their legs. So
Drake, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been great hanging out with y'all, and I've learned so much in the 48 hours since you've arrived, you know, just hanging out with you. So it's been great. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Yeti, for supporting us on this journey of a lifetime as we traverse the heart of the horse world.